super cloudy again. It actually looks like it's drizzling a little bit in some places, but again, there's the bright sky, so there's hope I guess it'll go away. And what's going on today? Unfortunately, today it doesn't seem like it's a very good day for the country overall. It would appear with that Freedom Convoy protest happening in Ottawa, the police got really aggressive to the point I think we've officially have our Tiananmen Square, I guess, picture forever. That's the one where the guy was standing in a tank, for example, in protest. Whereas now, I guess it's police ramming a person with a horse. I can only base it on what I see online. And from what I saw, it seems like for the most part, it was just people protesting and all that. And then all of a sudden, the police comes in with things like horses and all that. It doesn't look like they charged into them, but you can imagine with how heavy a horse is compared to a person, even like a little nudge could probably be so big. And that's where I guess that photo came from, or video, where people are making, I guess, memes and stuff out of it to show you how crazy it is down there. I think that will officially be the defining image or video of this whole thing afterwards. It doesn't matter what side you're on, that will be like, I guess, the tank photo, I would imagine, just based on things like the reactions. And that's the crazy thing, because in terms of information, who do you, I guess, trust in that case? So let's just pretend right now you had no idea of the situation and you only read one source, which is from the police. That would be the most logical thing, right? Because that's an official source. But you can read here, for example, where they first write, apparently, it says here, please note, no one has been seriously injured or passed away in any of today's police actions. Safety is our priority. My assumption, if you read that first, you would assume, okay, whatever, it's just like a bunch of people telling protesters to go away and so forth. But that's where people are calling them up, because there's so many people with cameras and stuff like that. Like right in the response, people will say things like, really? And even post, it shows you like what from other outlets, like here, what the police arrested demonstrators at gunpoint near the Parliament building in Ottawa in an effort to end the weeks-long protests. So what are they doing here? Bringing out weapons, I guess, what, tear gas and stuff like that, by the looks of it anyways, or pepper spray, whatever you want to call that. Now with that alone, again, it comes down to things like information. Like for example, this guy, I believe it says he's a writer, and it says, in my opinion, this requires a correction from the NY Times. On what basis do they assert that people were arrested at gunpoint? Armed police is not at gunpoint. Unless weapons were drawn and pointed at protesters, then this is both factually incorrect and dangerous to assert. So it's one of those things where you shouldn't jump the gun. If they are just, quote, walking around with weapons not pointing it at people, then you can't claim again they're pointing their guns at them. But that's where people called them out again, because there's so many people with cameras and stuff. Like this guy replies, on what basis do they assert that people were arrested at gunpoint? Like he quoted him and he shows the picture here. I mean, to me, that looks like they're pointing a weapon at them. And there's more, like people follow up saying, also this. I guess they're pointing guns at vehicles and so forth. Who do you believe there again? Like, there's just so much information there. I think this kind of shows clear cut they were pointing their weapons. Now apparently it seems like since people were going back, you can see here, the police then writes this message, I believe this one's from today. It says, protesters, we told you to leave. We gave you time to leave. We were slow and methodical, yet you were assaultive and aggressive with officers and horses. Based on your behavior, we are now responding by including helmets and batons for our safety. I don't know, you're looking at the live streams and all that. It doesn't seem like, for the most part, it's people going crazy or anything like that. It's police going in there with like horses and stuff like that and weapons. But you can see, like, people that are, I guess, promoting it too, in terms of supporting what they're doing. It's kind of interesting to think about. Like this person here writes, to our law enforcement, thank you for what you are doing and be safe. For the most part, you did a fine job yesterday. Sending the horses in was a mistake. The lasting image of the protest will be your horses trampling an elderly First Nations woman with a walker. It was a horrible image. It's kind of interesting here too, because this person here says, I've watched that video multiple times. It appears that the protesters were pushing against the police and the woman who was in front got pushed into the horses. I mean, there's plenty of videos you can see, and even people responding saying, no, this is a new angle and she got smashed into it. Now, you would think a rational person would look at that and say, oh, I stand corrected, for example. But then you have people still saying, I don't care. She, along with everyone else, was given more than ample warning to get out of the way. How is that even, I guess, rational and logical there? I mean, it's one thing that you don't agree with a certain side and so forth, but to deny like facts and stuff afterwards, that's kind of crazy. I think that was one of the center points of the conversation too, how it's crazy that there's so many people just being blind to it and just cheering on like this type of, I guess, action and so forth. I mean, isn't that kind of scary when you read like these comments, people saying, yes, more to all our police forces out there. Watching this now is like watching a gold medal game and knowing your team is gonna win. Again, to me, this comes down more to like people are treating this like a religion. Like for some people, like you're the holy one, they're the evil one, so forth. I mean, it should be based on the facts and what you see there, correct? I mean, again, you don't have to agree with what they say and all that, but how can you deny, like, I don't know, like the facts and stuff like that? And one of the interesting thing is, I guess with that in mind, is how many people actually, let's just say, I don't know, support that cause versus are against it. So it's kind of interesting actually reading things like those Twitter hashtags, because you kind of see the trend in the amount of people that say support it. For example, one word that was being, I guess, thrown out a lot was sickening, I guess, in response to the incident. There was like what, almost 25,000 tweets, and then people right here, Flew Truck Clan, I guess that's against them, and there's like 4,000 tweets, which shows you there's more people who are against, I guess, what's happening. Or again, even more words that were coming out, like hold the line, like 24,000, and again, like the Flew Truck Clan, about 4,000. And it just keeps going on in terms of other examples too. Sickening, trampling. It's kind of interesting to think about, because I know in terms of the people protesting, what a lot of people would use against them is how they don't follow the science and all that, whereas they argue it's not right with the way things are being handled with lockdowns and stuff like that, mandatory, I guess, vaccine passports. So it's kind of interesting actually just to read from the perspective of actual, I guess you could say, scientists or doctors. Here it says, Dear Prime Minister Trudeau, as in many other countries since the outbreak of the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, Canadians have been subjected to draconian restrictions placed on their basic freedoms, such as lockdowns, forced quarantines, mask mandates, school closures, and more recently, vaccine mandates. Leaders all over the world have begun to realize that these measures carry enormous harms with little or no benefit. Others double down on their previous positions, denying the evidence and aggravating the damage done to their nation and livelihood and fundamental liberties. In recent weeks, we have been following the news about the Freedom Convoy 2022 protests that have taken place in Canada in response to these measures. We witnessed with mourning concern how, instead of constructive dialogue with the protesters, you adopted a smear by association campaign, portraying the protesters as Nazi sympathizers, racist, anti-Semitic. The last incident was your allegation on February 16th that a Jewish member of the Conservative Party was standing with people who waved swastikas. With an apolitical group of Jewish Israeli medical scientists, physicians, researchers, and legal scholars, some of us second or third generation Holocaust survivors are deeply concerned by your attempt to stigmatize the Freedom Convoy 2022 protesters as Nazi ideology supporters. Doesn't that make you think? Again, this shouldn't be about like some religion where you're right, they're wrong. You should actually judge everything based on the facts and the science, as they say. And interestingly enough, as you know, with the Emergencies Act, they arrested some, I guess, supporters, like people who actually started it. And with the person being arrested, you wonder, well, what were they charged with? You would imagine for something that drastic, it would be like, I don't know, conspiracy to murder someone or something like that. But apparently this was an official release from the Ottawa police. It says here, charge laid in relation to unlawful protests in Ottawa. The Ottawa Police Services has arrested and charged Tamara Lich, 49 years old, of Medicine Hat, Alberta. So what was she charged with? It says here, Lich has been charged with counseling to commit the offense of mischief. She is scheduled to appear in court today. Counseling to commit the offense of mischief? Is there like a police officer here and stuff? Isn't mischief just, for example, like say, I don't know, someone kicking or damaging a property? And that's what she's got charged with and arrested for, is counseling, or that's the accusation and all that. You would think for something to be that big, again, it would be something like conspiracy to murder, I don't know, the government or something like that. I believe that was actually one of the things they said, where they said their goal was to take over the government, so they're dangerous, like a terrorist in that way. That doesn't make sense to me in terms of the charges there. And to my knowledge, they actually kept her in jail, I think, for like a day or so. So people are wondering, how can that be the case with this? I'm not a police officer or a lawyer, but that doesn't make sense. I think for me though, just reading all the information, this is probably one of the saddest videos I saw, where there were actual veterans. It seemed like they started to cry in that scenario of, I can't believe it, like this is not what they fought for.
They are breaking the law. We are doing the right thing. They are breaking the law.
You guys have our veterans in tears. Our veterans are in tears because they know this is not what they fought for.
Pushing our veterans.
Our veterans are literally in tears. You got mamas in tears and you have your veterans in tears. The veterans that fought for this country are in tears.
You guys have a choice.
You see it, you feel it.
Who do you believe at the moment? But for myself, the biggest takeaway here is how, again, it comes down to things like information, and especially with things like what the police were publishing, there's just so much difference. That's the scary thing. To me, with all this too, this seems like it's actually bigger than I thought in terms of how important it is in history. At minimum, I would say, even if they're all kicked out and so forth, I think this made a lasting image on the world in terms of something isn't right. Logically, when you think about it, how other people are handling the pandemic and so forth, like here you have like doctors and stuff saying these lockdowns and stuff make no sense. I can only conclude so far anyways, this whole thing feels like it's all about a power play, like you better do as I say, so to speak, or else you will be punished and I'll make your life a living hell type of thing. Because it doesn't make any rational sense, I think, logically or scientifically. Alright, see you guys later.